The next item on the agenda is the Inspections and Enforcement Unit Annual Performance Report 2013. David East will move that and Tim Scandrett will second it. Are there any questions? Yanni?
Again, in the paper today, there's concern about the asbestos and WorkSafe. Is there a need for us to do you think, any further external investigations into that asbestos? I mean, it seems like it's, for whatever reason, the report said that there were quite poor processes in place. And, yeah, so
we have reported recently back up through the Environmental Committee on the work that's been done around asbestos across the city. A lot of it is being led by WorkSafe, given that they're the lead regulator, because a lot of this work is actually occurring within a occupational setting. So we have just last week launched the Asbestos Aware, which I flicked through an email just to give you a heads up that is coming. So the campaign at the moment really is targeting DIY home renovations or repairs or people undertaking that work and small-time contractors, so that people actually know what they need to do, how they need to manage that waste and then move through it for it. Part of the interagency group has been looking at the risks associated with asbestos, and I'm quite happy, in part of the email that I sent to you last week, I just gave a big rundown on what exactly is being done around asbestos. So whilst we have a role to play in our unit around supporting asbestos in public places and giving great public advice in relation to how to manage asbestos, the lead comes from WorkSafe.
So if we had concerns about WorkSafe, how would we actually address that?
Concerns about WorkSafe's approach to asbestos? Yeah. I think you'd go to WorkSafe and raise those concerns.
Right. But as far as from a council staff point of view, you think things are being handled well at the moment, and there wouldn't be really any grounds to raise? From
a council staff point of view, and you can see we've the asbestos, the number of complaints that we've had in relation to asbestos, or the inquiries that we've had, still remain relatively low. From the Joint Agency Waste and Environmental Management team and the quarterly reporting that we do up through the Environmental Committee, the complaints coming through those avenues remain relatively low. WorkSafe and our Waste and Environmental Management team have got scheduled a number of, and I'm in the thousands, of joint agency inspections this year. So they've got a joint work program, so they're looking at things like asbestos. Off the top of my head, on the number 1,600, they have got 1,600 site visits planned to do this year, looking at things like asbestos, silica management, health and safety risks on sites and everything. So there is a tremendous amount of work being done out and about in relation to asbestos and monitoring the environment and understanding what is happening.
But just a final question on page 120. It says that there's been 12 instances of asbestos found in public places, vacant sections and roadways. I was quite shocked to see that asbestos had been found at the Metro Sports facility, which is a SERA project. Have we looked at how the demolitions were able to occur and leave asbestos behind, and then put in place learnings from how that's happened, so that going forward we don't have a repeat?
So the CCDU owned that site, and the demolition was led by them and their contractors. So a lot of the management of asbestos, or in fact any hazardous material, is often tied up in the contract related to the demolition of that site. So they expect that due process is being followed in relation to how a contract unfolds. And the contracts that I've seen and know and understand about are really detailed when it comes to addressing hazardous materials on site and how they must go through that process. As you're aware, you don't need a demolition consent for a building that's less than 3 stories high and is freestanding. So those mechanisms for what may have been seen historically as something that council might be looking at aren't there anymore. So we don't go and inspect, there is no mechanism around consent.
Sorry to interrupt. I understand that. I guess what I'm really asking though is that a gap? Because what I can't understand is how you get a major public new facility with asbestos left after it's demolished. So do you think, I mean, I just can't I'm trying to understand the lessons from how that happened and put in place things that actually stop that happening going forward. So I don't know, is that through do you think a requirement for consents would be a way to go, if that's the issue, or?
I think you're asking me of an opinion of something that actually I'm not qualified to talk to. What I can say is that following the Metro Sports Facility demolition and the issues that have been raised around asbestos with DBH and other council, part of the council that was involved in leasing that land for public car parking, that they've gone back and looked at the contracts to make sure and are going to be much more fastidious in the contracts around how that is managed in the future, particularly where council is leasing the space to utilise for the public or the CDHB were utilising the space for their staff.
Okay. So at some stage I can raise it offline, but I would like to understand those 12 instances and what the lessons learned were from each one.
I can give you a classic example of one of those 12 incidents. Was an asbestos roof being replaced off an industrial building, and this is the kind of thing that happens off an industrial building out in Sockburn, and there was high winds and the material had been lifted off the top of that roof and had been blown over a nearby building and had landed in the street nearby. So that's the kind of things that we get involved in, and it's the kind of issues that we have in relation to asbestos. Though some of the complaints aren't actually, whilst they say they're asbestos, it's not asbestos found. So somebody's identified something falling off the back of a truck or some hazardous material or material that they believe is asbestos but isn't actually when we go and investigate. So it's little things. Not necessarily big demolition issues that asbestos complaints are made to us about.
I've got David and Andrew. Is that right? No. And maybe
I had
I'm
a question
mixing them on Phil and then Ali.
Page 112, just the outcomes of impounded dogs. There doesn't seem to be much of a trend in the sort of disposal of impounded dogs. And are those dogs more, well, obviously it would be, are they unchipped dogs? They'd have to be, otherwise you get them back to your owner.
Typically they are, and actually there is a real trend. We disposed dogs, there's 25% less dogs disposed of in the last 12 months than
last
in previous.
12 months,
yep.
But compared to the year before,
yep.
only a small.
Yep. But it's still coming back because you've also got to think that dogs have been kind of displaced.
So are we inheriting a lot of pups and that sort of things that are unmicrochipped? And
no.
So where are these dogs coming from if they're not microchipped?
Councillors, a lot of these dogs tend to come from other regions throughout the district. It's in Christchurch, there's a requirement to have dogs neutered and microchipped, and the council provide free microchipping in the city. There are a lot of dogs that aren't microchipped throughout the rest of the regions that are close neighbours to ours, and they tend to come in on the odd occasion. We pick them up as they're wandering the street, and as people find them and give them to us, so that they're not microchipped dogs. The compliance of microchipping dogs in other areas is not as stringent as it is in the city, because we provide a free service here.
So our immediate neighbours, Selwyn and Waimakariri, don't have microchipping?
Yes, they do, but they don't have a free service like we do, and therefore the compliance is in Christchurch. You would have no reason not to have your dog microchipped if it was free. It's not the same compliance or requirement in Waimakariri, for instance, unless the local authority was vigilant about making sure people did have their dogs microchipped.
Well, I mean, I just would have thought in the Christchurch metropolitan area, the requirement to dispose of dogs because of our microchipping policy should be trending down to single digit figures or double digit figures.
And that's what we're certainly hoping for in the next few years. As dogs get older, there should be more dogs microchipped, and therefore less dogs going to shelters and less dogs. You're still going to get people from other regions who bring them in that are still required to be microchipped, but aren't as diligent in terms of checking that they are microchipped.
Okay, look, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to take the lunch adjournment, and I've got 2 more people, so we're going to have to deal with this after lunch. I do apologise. Who are the 2 others that are going to ask questions? Phil and Ellie.
My clarification is a question mark on there.
Well, hang on. I have to close the meeting because I've got to. We've got a meeting at 12:30, so that some of us have to attend. So if they really can't be asked offline, then.
Yeah, mine can too.
Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And thank you for your tolerance and understanding. We'll adjourn until 2 o'clock.